start with, in my matching and blessing story, you have to kind of go back 20 years to when I was 5 years old, because that's when I decided I want to get matched and blessed. And so I've been thinking about it for a very long time. I don't remember what happened to make me think about it, but I was a little 5, 6-year-old Samuel thinking about the matching and blessing. So when I was about, I don't know, 16 or something, I spoke to my dad and I was like, I'm ready. And he was like, no, you're not. So we kind of put it in the back for a little while, and then when I became 19, we started again, seriously thinking about it. But when I look at my matching timeline, I look at kind of 2 or 3 distinct areas in my life. So the first one being, what did I do to my character, to my personality, to myself, to make myself a better person so that a girl will accept me? Because those of you who knew me 10 years ago, you knew I was extreme, I was crazy, I was like some fanatic. Not many women would be very enthusiastic about being with such an extremist. Like if it's 0 to 10, I was like a 20. You know, I wouldn't do things in halves. And I'm still kind of that way, but Hannah's really mellowed me down. So that was one of the things that my dad and I would speak about quite often, are my flaws in my personality that are not very friendly in a relationship. So I would focus quite a bit on improving my personality, myself. I was lucky that I didn't have any really major negative detriments that would cause troubles, like for example, pornographic addiction or stuff like that. I didn't mess with that at all, but I had, personality quirks. So that's where I focused on. And then the other one was also to focus on understanding what it meant to get blessed. What does it mean? What is the difference between the blessing and the marriage is kind of the classic second-gen young person question that I would kind of try and understand myself, speak to my dad, speak to people about, because I didn't want to accept the blessing if I didn't know what I was getting into, right? It's not just a marriage. So I did think about, the meaning of the blessing, but for me, like I said, I started thinking about that when I was 5, so I wasn't super concerned about that. I focused more on the practical, daily habits, eliminating and adding bad and good habits, respectively. So briefly, I'm going to go over kind of the 3 parts of working on myself, what practical things I did, then also learning about relationships and women, because those of you who know my sister know that she was not a normal girl growing up. She was more of a tomboy. So I didn't really learn about women in my home because she was not feminine at all. She became feminine when she got married, actually, at 18, 19. But growing up with her, we would fight, fist fight all the time. So it wasn't, I didn't know anything about women. So I kind of knew I needed to read and learn about women a little bit more. And then part 3 will be kind of just the timeline of how I got matched. So around 19 years old, like I said, is when I got serious about the matching, and I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm ready, and he kind of agreed. And we had no clue what to do, how to do it. So one critical thing, before I get to that, one critical thing was my relationship with my dad wasn't so good prior to the matching. We are both alpha males, we are both kind of the roosters, and we were under one roof, so we would fight all the time. And that's not an ideal situation when you're trying to get matched with your parents involved. And those of you who don't know, my mom has Alzheimer's, so she's out of the picture because she was gone mentally. So it's just me and my dad. And so we realized, both of us, that we needed to do something about our relationship before we took concrete steps towards getting matched. Because despite our negative relationship, we would still be very open with each other about, like, if I had a crush, or if I had feelings, or if he felt like I needed to improve on something, he would never hesitate to say, this is wrong, you need to do this. so I think it's very critical that as a parent-child relationship that we didn't have any barriers between us. We felt like no topic was off topic. We felt like no discussion was out of bounds. Everything was inclusive, and it's kind of that way when you're married, right? So he had to be that way with me so that I get all of the negative stuff put into light, so that it doesn't come up 5 years later when I'm married. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing I did, was speak almost on a daily basis with my dad about myself, about what am I doing wrong, what are my personality quirks. One of the big ones, just as an example, was I would start talking at a normal volume, and then little by little I'd kind of increase my voice. Benji, I'd start increasing my volume until I was almost shouting, and I didn't even know that I was doing this. And I thought I was speaking calmly and logically and unemotionally because that was the way I saw it. But to everyone else, I was this fanatic frothing at the mouth, screaming and yelling and stuff. So, and this still comes up a little bit with my relationship with Hannah, but I actually, as I was reading my notes yesterday, I commented to her, hey, you haven't told me to stop shouting in a long time. I was like, yeah, that's right. So it's getting better. But when we started my relationship with Hannah, I would just be talking normally, and she'd be like, stop shouting. I'd be like, I'm not shouting. You haven't seen shouting. Anyway, she saw it once in road rage incidents, but not towards her. So that was kind of like an example of what I would do to focus on myself, because you're in a relationship, you don't want to be shouting at each other all the time. And I wasn't even aware that I was shouting. That was the problem. So yeah, once I kind of focused on that, about 19 years old, I started getting to a point to where, I wasn't ready, but I was ready enough. And so after some discussion, we decided that the website would be our best bet because, there's not too many eligible girls in North Carolina, my age at the time, and I didn't know that many people. My dad knows very few people in America, so we were just like, okay, website it is. And then I wrote my profile kind of thinking I could do it in a day or two, 3 days maybe, and it ended up taking me over 2.5 years to finish my profile. So it's, you look at them, I don't know how many questions there are now, but when I did, I think there were 12 or 13 questions, and you looked at it, and I was like, I write essays for college, how hard can this be, right? And it turned out to be extremely difficult. My dad would always say, you gotta advertise yourself without advertising yourself. You can't be showing off, but you gotta let them know what you have. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? Anyway, so it was a really fine balance of, I would write something, we'd look at it, we'd think about it, and then I'd have to scrap it and start all over again. And so I ended up writing 3 profiles. The first one I was listening to heavy metal, and the words death before dishonor were in my profile. And my dad was like, yeah, if you're applying for the Special Forces, go for it. But if you're looking for a woman, you can forget about it. So the second one, it was a little bit too wishy-washy. I went too far the other side. I was too flimsy, too feminine, and because I was trying to compensate for the first one. So the third one, I kind of ended up finding the middle road and kind of being able to grasp both sides, the masculine and the feminine, and blend them together in a way. And then I think that took a few months. And then after that, it was like 1.5 years or so of just editing this sentence, that word, changing this, there. Almost every day, I'd be reading it, I'd be reflecting on it, I'd be changing a word or a sentence or a paragraph. And Hannah commented, so she's not here because she's sick, but I'll kind of give a little bit of her side of the story when I get to the actual timeline. But she would comment like, yeah, I read his profile and it scared me because there wasn't a single comma out of place and there wasn't a single typo. Everything was immaculate. I was like, yeah, it took me 2.5 years to edit it. It better be perfect. But anyway, wow, I don't know what it is. Yeah, so as I was kind of writing the profile and reflecting on myself and these kinds of things, like I mentioned earlier, I started reading books on women. I I started reading books on relationships. I don't know if you guys know Mark Gungor's Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, that kind of stuff. I'd kind of pay attention to that a little bit so I can kind of tune myself in to what the feminine side is like. If you have no sisters, or if you don't have a good relationship with your sisters and you don't really understand women, I think like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is a really good generalization book. Of course there are going to be exceptions, and not all women fit into the mold put in those types of books, and not all men are going to fit into the molds of those types of books. But I think to give like a general overview of the differences between the sexes, I think that was a really good thing. And my favorite book actually was The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. I don't know if you guys know that one, but he said in there, he's a psychologist, and he described love. He defined love. And love is not the emotion, love is work. Love is, doing something for your spouse when you don't want to. And I think that really helped me to put into perspective a relationship, because in this society, we're bombarded with movies and TV shows and all this, that, the other about love is how you feel towards someone, or love is falling in love, and when you fall out of love, well, I guess the love's not there anymore. And so to have a psychologist who analyzed people who are psychotic, who are unable to love, and then analyzed people who are normal and able to love, and to have him define, I wish I wrote it down, did I write it down? The will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth is his definition of love. And I thought, wow, this sounds like it came from a first gen, it's really...
Can you say it again?
It is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. So you're working to improve yourself and your spouse's spiritual life, your emotional life. It's not just lovey-dovey, happy stuff all the time. So that really helped me to kind of ground myself and not be up in the clouds and like, oh, I'm in love, blah, 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 whatever. But to really focus on what was important in a relationship, number of children, religious life, faith levels, etc., that kind of stuff, rather than just, oh, she's pretty, I like her, okay, let's go, So, yeah, I guess I'll jump a little bit into the timeline now, because I don't need my notes for this. So like I said, I was on the website for 2.5 years, and Hannah, at the time, was looking for her sister on the website, because her sister's quite similar to Mr. Hendrick's eldest daughter. She started processes way back when. She's, 31, 32 now, and none of them seemed to work, and so she was getting quite negative and jaded, and so she didn't want to look on the website herself, so she asked Hannah to look for her, and to kind of vet the ones that she would think would be good. So Hannah was on there, and obviously I was 21, so I was quite young for her sister, who was 25 at the time. But for some reason, she just happened to hit next page. Because at the time on the website, like I said, I don't know what it is like now, but at the time it was organized by, I think it was like 10 profiles per page, and then you could see the ages of the people, and it was usually organized by age. So she went down to the bottom, which was like 23 years old, which is still quite young for her sister, but for some reason she hit that next page button, and then she saw my profile. And she was quite attracted to it to start with, partially because I've been working on it for 2.5 years, and also because we are very compatible as personalities. We really mesh with each other well. So she sat and she thought about it for about a month, and then her sister and her parents finally got it out of her. Hey, is there someone you're thinking about? And then they reached out to Benji, who was my matching advisor, and then the kind of the process got started from there. Emails back and forth, and actually it was called off in the first week and a half because of miscommunication. So, I don't know how many of you guys, parents, are going to experience this, but if you receive an email and you don't have time to respond saying, I have received your email, I don't have time to respond, I'll get to it when I can. Because my dad sent an email, so the parents kind of exchanged testimonies and stuff, and so my dad sent the email explaining our family situation. my sister and I are both offering children. My mother is in Italy. She's in a nursing home. She has a mental disorder, et cetera, et cetera. And they didn't respond for a week. And so we were kind of looking at each other like, do they not like us and they just don't know how to respond? Like, what's going on? And so he sent an email saying, it's off. Sorry, it doesn't look like it's working. And then fortunately, Anna's father called and kind of explained, sorry, I was working. As a stagehand, he works sometimes like 20-hour days, so like incredible hours. So there's a good reason why he didn't respond, but it would take 10 seconds to say, I don't have time, I've seen your email, I'll respond later, you know. He just didn't think about it. So fortunately, it was back on, and then we started Skyping, and Skype chatting, not Skype video, it's too early for that. And then our first conversation was over 4 hours. And, you know, our first conversation, we talked about most of the difficult things, like the things that need to come up in a relationship early. Not what's your favorite color, or what movie did you watch that you like, or we didn't talk about any of that for months. We talked about how many kids do you want, what's your faith, you know, where are you going in your life, what's your vision, what kind of person do you want in your life. You know, these kind of critical personality and religious questions that, you know, it doesn't matter how compatible you are. If she wants children and you don't, as a man, it's not going to work. I mean, you know, and it's better to find out in the first or second conversation these kinds of things before you develop an emotional attachment to the person than, you know, 6 months down the line. I have friends who've learned that their spouse doesn't want kids after they got blessed. And I'm like, what? Anyway, so as a tip to you guys and girls, ask these questions right away, because it really helped me and her, and it also helped establish the mood, because I saw, dang, this girl's serious, just like me. You know, if she were just looking to flirt or looking to have a good time or whatever, I would have caught that and I would have said, sorry, not for me, because I'm serious. I want someone I want to get married to, not someone I want to hang out with. And she felt the same way about me, that, you know, I'm not just some dude who likes her, you know, because she's a pretty face. Speaking of which, she's beautiful, but her profile photos sucked. Like, I don't know what her parents were thinking about choosing these photos. Maybe they're trying to find a guy who didn't care about her looks, because she is a really beautiful woman, but these photos made her look pretty bad. So when I first got her profile, I was like, okay, I like her profile, so I'll go for it. You know, and then I met her, I was like, what the heck? This is the same girl. Anyway, but that was needed for me, because I was becoming a little focused on the physical. I wanted a pretty wife. I was really into running at the time, so I really wanted a runner. And then I decided to give all that up and just be like, okay, God, you know, give me who you give me. And then here comes Hannah. She's a runner. She goes to the gym. She also, you know, she does all these activities. And I was like, dang, this is more than what I thought I could ask for. So, yeah. So we, like I said, 4-hour conversations were kind of normal for us. And then within a month, we had met in New Jersey. And then we spent 12 hours or 13 hours walking around New York City, just talking. And I thought of all the bad things about me, and during that walk, I told her everything. And I was like, this is who I am, and if you don't like me, good, you know, like, good that you know now. And she was able to kind of be like, well, that's the worst he has to offer, so good, let's go forward. So then she came down to North Carolina, I don't know, like a month and a half, no, 2 weeks later, something like that, 3 weeks later. And then we decided in January that, so we started talking in November, and we decided in January that we wanted to get matched. But both of our parents were kind of like, let's wait a little bit. So we did the ceremony in May, and then, yeah, we went to the blessing the following February. Actually March, but we ended up there in February. So yeah, I mean, we were a not smooth and smooth process at the same time. We weren't smooth because of the miscommunication between the parents in the beginning, but once we were communicating, it was very smooth. It was very flowy, everything worked. I could sense very clearly that this is the person that God has picked out for me, and she felt the same way. Yeah, and then I guess I have a couple minutes, so and it's kind of been proven to me that we are really good for each other, because we just got off of 10 months of traveling with each other, so we were with each other literally 24 hours a day for about 10 months. You know, maybe a couple minutes here and there in the day we weren't together, but we were together for a good portion of the year. And we fought quite a bit, and we struggled quite a bit, but we came out of it like so much stronger. And I know several couples who go traveling the world and then they end up breaking up during their traveling. And it felt really hard at times. But because we got out of it, and now we are like really tight, more than we were before we left, it shows me that we know how to fight. You know, like our relationship is pretty solid because we don't not fight, but we fight well. So, yeah, I'm really grateful that the matchbook was around, the website was around to facilitate this. Because without the website, I didn't know. We had one friend in common, and she knew Benji from God, and that was about it. So 2 people in common, you know. And so there was no way that our lives would have been together had we not had a facility like the Matchbook website. You know, when I came up to Jersey, and I lived in Jersey for a little while in New York, and I met her friends, I probably made like 400 or 500 connections that I had never made before. And it was just, it blew my mind that, you know, I thought I was well connected, but not at all. So yeah, so the website, you know, some second gen like to allude to it as like the meat closet or the meat hook. I forgot what they call it. It's like your piece of meat hanging on the wall, and you know, you just kind of go through the rack. I can see why they think that, but I don't really agree, because, you know, it expands the horizons so much that I'm just really grateful for it. So yeah, I think that's it.